Hey guys, Waterfowler41 here, and in today's video we're going to be installing all of this stuff on top of my 2020 Ram Rebel. So what is this? This is the GoRhino Ceros roof rack. So this is a low profile roof rack that's going to go on top of the cab of my truck. And the beauty of this whole kit here is, A, it's aluminum, so it's super light, but also it's 100% bolt-on. So a lot of the other racks on the market today require drilling into the channel on top of, on each side of the roof to install riv nuts, and then you bolt everything down. This rack is a little bit different in that still provides the same sort of storage and mounting area on top of the truck, but it mounts using clamps. So it's 100% bolt-on, there's no drilling needed, it's not a permanent installation. So if I ever need to remove the rack for whatever reason, it's as simple as undoing 4 bolts, pulling this rack off, and then putting the channel back on, and we're good to go. But again, one of the only racks on the market today that's 100% bolt-on for these trucks. Everything else requires riv nuts, and it's a little bit more of a permanent installation, which is probably why you don't see too many these days. So enter the Ceros rack. But anyway, before I get too far into the weeds on the installation, which is super simple, real quick, GoRhino did give me a couple of coupon codes to share. So on the left side, I'll share the coupon code for basically everything on their store. That's 30% off minus the E1 running boards. So they just released those drop down electric running boards. The coupon code on the left works for 30% off of everything except those. The coupon code on the right will give you 10% off of the E1 running boards. So you're going to see Waterfowler41 for your 30% coupon code for everything, Waterfowler41-E1, that'll be for just the E1 running boards. But anyway, back into the video. So in this video, we're gonna assemble the whole rack, so we don't need to do anything on the truck just yet. So let's build the rack, and then I'll show you how this installs on the rack. But real quick, I know the highlight of this whole kit is the fact that it is 100% bolt-on, and I apologize, my neighbor's having a roof installed right now. But this is where the critical parts of the kit. So these are the clamps that go on the rain channel or the above the doors and allow you to mount these brackets, which is what this whole roof rack mounts to. But again, these are rubberized coated. So one of the things that I was a little curious about is how do you have a clamp style bracket like this without marring the paint on the truck? And the answer is simple, just a rubberized coating on here. So these are all rubberized coated. These are as well, because these basically sit inside the channel on the truck. We'll get to this stuff in my next video, but what we're looking at here is an SS42 Stage Series Diode Dynamics light bar. That's gonna mount on top of the roof rack here, but we need to get this assembled to get it installed on the truck. So today's video is just gonna focus on the rack. Part 2 of this is gonna be when I install the light bar, and we're gonna use the KC Universal Wire Holder to run the wires down the A-pillar of the truck. All right, so we're gonna get into the assembly here. Couple little overviews here. First of all, this kit comes with a ton of hardware, so it's in your best interest. Go ahead and separate all that stuff in advance. You're gonna be using a lot of these guys right off the bat, and then we'll slowly be switching over to the hex head bolts. But go ahead, separate them out, make sure you have enough hardware, because you don't wanna get too far in the installation and have to run out to the hardware store or whatnot. Anyway, what we have here is all of our crossbars. So we have 8 crossbars here, and then 1 of our side panels. The side panel looks absolutely beautiful, but what you'll see here is a bunch of holes drilled to mount 7 crossbars up top, and then 1 of the front crossbars down low. So what we're gonna do is take this screw, washer, lock washer, and then we're gonna pass the screws through the side rail, and those are gonna drill or screw right into the end here. So you got some tapped holes here, and that's how each of these crossbars are gonna mount to the side panel. We're gonna do that with this side as well as that side, and then we'll go ahead and put the middle piece in. All right, so we are halfway done with the side rails. One thing to note here, when you're installing these, don't tighten these up just yet. Wait till everything else is situated and in place. So all you gotta do is just make sure these are snug, and then what we'll do is we'll go over and do the next side. So I was talking about the accessory track holes or access holes. I went ahead and just put them all on one side. Later on down the road, if I need to switch them, it's pretty easy. Just pop out the screws on this side, and then I can flip the bar around. But I guess I like consistency. So you have a access hole on the top, the bottom, and then on each side. And we'll get to the sides in a second because we're gonna be throwing some hex bolts in there to mount that center section. But let's go ahead and get the passenger side rail, or I guess driver's side rail installed, and then we'll start talking about the middle piece. So let's go ahead. All right, we got our rack sidebars and crossbars assembled. Now we're gonna do this little spine piece. So the spine piece, the way this mounts is pretty neat. So you can see all of these little notches or all these little tabs that go along the middle. So basically what's gonna happen is this bar itself is gonna drop down and once it drops down, it aligns with the side channel on the rails, and we're gonna use the smaller of the hex head bolts. We're gonna pop those in here, and we're gonna slide that across, and these are just gonna mount just like that. And then we got lock washer and nut that are gonna go on each side. So what we're gonna need to do is put 2 of those bolts in the front and back side of each of the rails. That way we have a bolt here, 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 and here. So you're gonna have 4 bolts per rail, 2 on the front, 2 on the back. So let's pull this off for now. We'll slide the bolts in there, get them all lined up, and then we'll go ahead and tighten everything down. This is what I was talking about, where you gotta be mindful of where these notches are. So if you're gonna add accessories later on down the road, so mounts for, let's say, traction boards or fishing rod holders or an awning or whatever, in order to slide a screw that goes in this channel from here over to there, you're gonna need to pull off that center section. So you either put your mounts in now or do it later on down the road. Or what you can do is take every other crossbar and flip it so the opening is on the other side. That way you can have this one and this one with the notch on this side, this one and this one with the notch on that side. So it gives you some options down the road. So just wanna make sure I call that out, because there isn't a notch or it isn't an opening on the other end, just on one end, which is a little unfortunate, but it's not the end of the world. All right, so we have all of those bolts slid in here, ready to go, and then all we gotta do is slip this guy over it, and then we're gonna tighten everything down with all these nuts. One thing you're gonna do before you tighten everything down is find dead center on the rack. So the rack is 54 inches wide, so 27 inches right in the middle. So what I'm gonna need to do is move the spine over just a smidge so it's lined up in the middle all the way down. That way we're not gonna have any sort of wind issues or square issues with the rack itself. So I might just go ahead and measure every single crossbar just to make sure that the middle of this is right at 27 inches, and then we can go ahead and tighten everything down. So super simple, let's just center it. And then we're gonna slide all of these lock washers around the studs that we slid inside each of the track. And then we're gonna put a nut on each one, and then we're good to go to tighten everything down. All right, so now that the rack is almost completely assembled, we got our center bar dead on in the center and everything's tightened down, we can focus on the front fairing here. So a couple things, before you install that, make sure on the front bar, so that's the lower bar here, you have 3 of the 3/4 inch hex nuts slid onto that front rail. So again, find the side with the notch, and you're gonna wanna have them pointing basically towards the front of the vehicle. Those will actually attach to these tabs, so there's one in the middle and then one on each side. Then what you're gonna wanna do is find the separate bag in your hardware kit called the SEMS bolts, and these are hex head. And basically what these will do is thread through the side holes on the fairing into these rib nuts on the side bar, and then we're good to go. So what we're gonna do is get those out of the bag, tighten down one side, line up these tabs, slowly pop everything into place, and then tighten down the other side. From there, then we can start checking to make sure that the rack is square and we can tighten down everything. So let's go ahead and get that fairing on there, and then we'll take a look at everything, and then we can start turning our attention to the truck itself. Right, so pull the truck in the garage. We have the fairing fully installed. Just have it rested on the truck bed for now. It's facing forward, so once all I gotta do is just lift it up and drop it in once I get the brackets in place. But speaking of brackets, before we install those, we need to go ahead and remove this black trim piece all the way across the roofline of the truck. The easiest way to do that is get a little trim removal and pry in right here. It's gonna be really hard to do it 2 hands. But what I'm gonna do is pry right here, and then what you wanna do is pull straight up, because there's a channel here, and you can't undo this whole trim until you undo this channel. So you wanna pop the clip here, and then just pull this whole black piece of trim straight up, and it slides right on. There's like aluminum C channel right here that it slides onto, and we'll pull it off. So once I get off, I'll show you what I'm talking about. But basically, you want to get a trim tool right in here, pull it up, and then there's 6 clips along the roofline that we're gonna leave in place, but we're just gonna unclip it from the top here. And like I said, the easiest way to do is pop the trim off from the inboard side of the roof, and then it'll push off of the outboard side. So let me get this trim off and I'll show you what I'm talking about with the clip. Okay, so here are the 2 plastic trim pieces that I just removed. Here's the driver's side, here's the passenger side. This is the back section that goes towards the rear window. You can see it's a C channel here, and this is what I was talking about. You gotta pull the whole trim straight up before you can pop the rest of the clips off. And I'll show you what that end piece looks like. So that's the end piece right there. It just slides right on over this plastic piece, and then it clips on these white clips. The instructions say to go ahead and remove these. I think that's just to give it a nice clean look, but since I want to be able to pop this thing on and off, I'm gonna leave those clips in place. If they're in the way, which I don't think they will be, but if they're in the way of the clamps when we go to put them on, I could pull those off or pull the whatever one I need to off. But I'm going to leave them there. You don't see them. And like I said, if I ever pull the rack off, I want to be able to pop that trim right back on quickly. And leaving these things in place is not going to cause any harm to the rack itself. So next thing we're going to do is go ahead and get the brackets ready to go. And then I will need to wait for my wife to get home because I'm going to need a second set of hands so we could raise that rack and then drop it right down onto the mounts or the bracket mounts when we get them on. All right, so let's talk through the brackets for how the rack itself mounts to the truck. So the brackets are two pieces. One piece is the actual piece that connects to the rack itself, and then the second piece is what connects to the car. So you can see here, this little plate is contoured or it's curved a little bit so it could wrap around the upper sill of the door. So you have your front bracket or front plate and bracket, and then you have your rear plate and bracket. The rear plate is flat because obviously the sill is completely flat, but the front has to be angled to account for the contours on the door itself. So these are the brackets. Basically what happens is you take this bracket itself for the rack, you have a hook there, the top hole of the plate hooks on that, and then you pass your bolt through this bottom portion, and then that is how it mounts to the truck. So the foot right here on that L bracket sits inside the little gutter, and then the bottom plate wraps around the sill. So let's take a look at what that looks like in practice. So I went ahead and roughed in my driver's side ones. So first thing you want to do is measure 8.5 inches from the windshield. So I put a little piece of tape there, and there you go. There's our front driver's side bracket. So you can see it wraps around the body nicely. It's not pushing on any sort of specific spot. And then that foot sits right inside the gutter. And there is a second little ledge in here, and the foot itself will sit inside the main portion of it. And then there's a little notch so you can fit it around this little ledge here. I did not have to move any of the white clips to make this one fit. But when we get to the rear, I'll show you I did have to move one of the clips or at least get it out of the way so we could put that rack mount on the rear of the truck. But like I said, 8.5 inches from the windshield, that's where the start is. Loosely in place now. Once we get the rack on here, I'll be able to make some final adjustments. But I just have everything roughed in right now on that front door. So let's go to the rear here. 36 5/8 inches from that bracket to this bracket, and that's where you have your rear rack mount bracket. Again, it wraps around and it follows the contours of the body, and it's rubberized so it's not going to scratch the paint. The foot itself sits inside here, and you can see it's right up against the pin for that little channel plastic. So I went ahead and removed that plastic clip here. Just a couple jeweler screwdrivers and it pops right off, and then I just pushed it back into the trim over there. That way I don't lose it. So we have this guy in place. I'm going to go ahead and do the passenger side ones as well. I'm going to flip the truck around. It'll be a lot easier to lift the rack that way versus fighting with the garage door here. And then I am going to wait for the boss to get home so we could install the rack here. All right, I got all 4 brackets roughed into place. Here is the back driver's side one. Each bracket's going to need 2 bolts from the rack to drop into the bracket itself to mount it. So you're going to have 2 bolts up there, 2 here, and then 4 on the other side as well, 2 in the back, 2 in the front. So with that said, before you go to install your rack, you want to make sure that you have 4 bolts slid onto the bottom side of the second member and the bottom side of the 6th member. Yep, 6th member. So you can see right down here, I got 2 bolts here, 2 bolts here, or 1 bolt, 1 bolt. This is going to be for that front bracket. It's going to drop right into the bracket here. And then on the 6th member here, I have 2 bolts right down here. Same thing on the other side. That's what, once you lower the rack down on top of those brackets, that's how you're going to bolt the rack itself to those brackets. Sorry, a little redundant there, but again, make sure you're sliding those bolts on. Again, on my side, everything slides in from the passenger side. You want to put it on the underside of the second member and on the underside of the 6th member before you do anything. And then just make sure you got 2 on one side, 2 on the other side. That way you're not messing with it once you're trying to get everything into place, because this thing's a little bulky. All right, I got the rack installed. I was impatient, couldn't wait for my wife, so I figured out a way to jerry-rig it up, basically using a ton of blankets. I teeter-tottered the rack on the back of the cab and then just slowly slid it forward. Really having those bolts already ready to go in the 2nd and the 6th member makes it really easy, because all you gotta do is aim those for the brackets. Once you get them in there, then you put a little nut on there just to hold it. That way everything else will pop right into place. So super easy, and again, because it's aluminum, it's really light. And it's pretty easy to manage. It's a little bulky, but it's pretty easy to manage, all things considered. Lighting kind of sucks right now, But I'm going to go ahead and tighten up everything, and then tomorrow, once we got some daylight, I'll give you kind of a full overview of everything. The beauty is it does fit in my garage. I was a little nervous that I'd install this and wouldn't be able to get out of my garage, but we're good to go on that front. But like I said, I'm going to go ahead and tighten everything down, and then tomorrow when we got some daylight, I'll do a quick walk around, show you everything, and then my top 5 takeaways from the install. Overall, very easy to do. Again, I did it all by myself, but there are some takeaways that I would definitely suggest you have in the back of your mind when you go to install this on your truck. But other than that, so far the fit and finish is awesome. Not one single issue with the installation. But let's go ahead and take a look at this tomorrow in the daylight. Let me go ahead and tighten everything up here, and we'll see you tomorrow. All right, it is a new day, and our GoRhino Ceros roof rack is fully installed, and it is looking awesome. Anyways, here is the GoRhino roof rack in daylight. Everything's looking great. Fitment, could not ask for anything better. Fit and finish was perfect, so I am very happy with the overall installation. It was super easy, and like I said, the biggest benefit of this kit versus all the other ones on the market today are this is 100% bolt-on, so just these clamps, and that's it. That's the only thing holding it to the truck. So 150-pound capacity, you're going to be able to haul quite a bit on this roof rack, as much as you really possibly need. As far as accessories, I'll be throwing some lights on here, maybe even an awning for some of tailgate season, but with respect to the main purpose of it, it was really to give me an option to mount that 42-inch light bar that we'll get into in the next video. All right, had to move my truck out of the way, had some traffic coming through, but let's get back into the video. So because this is the first bolt-on roof rack option for our trucks that gives you that whole platform on top of the cab, I anticipate I'm going to get a ton of questions. So I'm going to dive into 4 of the most common questions I think I'll get, and if you didn't answer your questions in these FAQs here, I guess, go ahead and drop them down in the comments or hit me up on Instagram. I'm happy to help. I want to make sure you have the right information to make the decision on your truck build, be it, you know, whether it helps you make a decision on this truck part or not. But first question is there wind noise? I'm sure that's going to be the most common question, and a lot of people's curiosity is going to be piqued on that one. Let me start by saying anytime you install something on the truck body, or really any car body, and you disrupt that airflow over the body, you're going to get noise. Now, it's how much noise you're actually going to get. So yes, I do get wind noise on this. Above about 50 miles an hour, you definitely hear it. If the windows are closed, you hear it a lot more than if the windows were wide open. You basically hear kind of a buffering noise on top of the roof. It's not insane. It's not, you know, super disruptive. But you do have a noise. And again, I wasn't anticipating after installing this that it'd be completely quiet like OEM. I knew I'd get a little bit of wind noise. It's totally livable, but I will probably try to make some adjustments over the next few days here after I get the light bar installed to try to minimize that. And really what I think a lot of that noise is coming from is the gap between the fairing and the top of the cab. So if you can minimize that as much as possible, then you're gonna get rid of some or all of or most of that noise. You're not going to completely get rid of all of it, but you will get rid of some of it. All right, question number 2. How much height does this guy add to the top of your truck? That's a multi-answer question. So I measured a few spots. In the middle of the roof, it adds about 2.5 inches. So from the top of the roof to the top of the roof rack, you get 2.5 inches. Near the shark fin on the back of the truck, so if I measure right from the middle of the shark fin to the top of the rack, it's 3.5, and the reason being is the roof tapers at the end of it. So ultimately you're adding 2.5 inches to what I would say is the tallest portion of your truck. And does it fit in a standard garage? Well, I have a 2-inch lift plus 34.5-inch tires plus 2.5 inches roof rack, and my truck still fits in the garage. It's close. I probably have 1.5 inches to spare, but that's about as much as you're adding on here. So again, 2.5 inches in the middle, roughly 3.5 inches near the shark fin. And again, that's measuring from the middle of the shark fin. Question number 3, did I have to modify any of the rack in order for it to fit on the truck? Yes and no. No, because the rack in and of itself fit on my truck 100% out of the box. So once you assembled it, everything fit perfectly on the truck. I say yes because now that I'm starting to fit my Diode Dynamics light bar on the front of the fairing here, I had to trim a little bit of the fairing to fit the light bar. 40-inch light bars all vary in terms of overall width, and because of that I had to trim a little bit on the edges. You can see on that far side and right here. I had to trim a little bit to accommodate the extra length of the brackets for the Diode Dynamics light bar. And because I haven't mounted the light bar in there yet, going back to my aerodynamics question, I'm not going to change or adjust the rack at all yet, because I want to see how much noise that will add or how much noise that will reduce, because I believe it will reduce some of the noise. And then from there, we'll start making some adjustments. All right, fourth and final question. Is this easy to remove? And the answer is yes. All it is 4 screws holding the rack itself, or these clamps, to the rack brackets. So you can see right here, let's see, you can see that little Allen head. So all you got to do is loosen up that on both sides and then on the front as well, and the whole rack itself along with the feet. So the feet are the portion that hangs in the gutter here. Those will all come off the truck, and then you can pull the clamps off and you're good to go. So you can leave the rack assembled, just undo those bolts on all 4 corners, and the whole rack itself can come off. Definitely have a second set of hands. It's going to be a hard thing to do without scratching your truck with just a single person, but it is totally feasible to do if you have a helper with you. But again, is it easy to remove? It most certainly is. It would be cool if they came up with some sort of quick disconnect way that you can access without any tools. But honestly, all you need is an 11mm wrench as well as a hex head screwdriver to remove each of the screws in each 4 corners and pop this guy out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of my GoRhino Ceros installation video. Hope you appreciated the install. Hope I answered some of the questions you might have. If I didn't, definitely leave them down in the comments below. Do me a huge favor, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Hit the like button on these videos. It really does help me bring more content to you all. Like I said, I'm changing my channel path from a following my build to let's just test as many parts as we can for these 5th gen Ram trucks. So I got a few more parts in the hopper, including a light bar that I'm gonna throw in here. And then as far as videos down the road, I'm playing with the idea of actually moving these chase lights up there. Now that I got a location to mount things, I think I'm gonna be able to throw much more usable light from a higher position than I do on the truck bed rails. But with that said, thank you very much for watching. Appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe. Have a good one. Bye.